Let's welcome right now Virginia Congressman James Walkinshaw. He serves on the Oversight and Homeland Security Committees. Congressman, welcome to you, sir. Democrats say they will not vote to fund DHS unless some real restrictions are put in place for federal immigration enforcement. Are there red lines that you won't cross when it comes to ICE accountability? Is there any bipartisan solution for DHS funding that could get your support?
Well, look, I think all of those reforms are important. The key ones for me, no masking, or at least severely limiting the masking. Officers need to identify themselves just like our state and local police do. And another one that's key for me is the judicial warrants. I just don't believe, and I think anyone who describes themselves as a small government conservative, as many of my Republican colleagues do, I don't think you can accept the federal government smashing down the door of your home while your wife and children are sleeping without a warrant signed by a judge. I just don't think the government should have the power to do that. Those are some of the elements that are key from my perspective.
You know, Congressman, I just have to ask, do you ever get a logical answer from anyone who supports keeping the face masks on for how they distinguish between what our local and state law enforcement officers don't wear masks, in other words, with what they're doing? Why is it that they say they will get doxxed? Could it be that what they're doing is rather heinous?
Well, look, I think anyone who's engaged in doxing or threatening or engaging in violence against law enforcement or anyone else should be prosecuted, period. But law enforcement in this country have taken on, arrested, prosecuted the most dangerous criminals in criminal gangs in the planet not wearing masks. I watched the federal law enforcement who escorted Nicolas Maduro into the courthouse and into detention, federal detention. They weren't wearing masks. This guy supposedly is a leader of a transnational crime syndicate who's very dangerous. Those officers weren't wearing masks. There's no justification for ICE agents and CBP agents engaged in enforcement of civil immigration law to wear masks.
I tell you, it just defies logic. I keep on wanting to get an answer for someone.
It's also really dangerous.
Say,
I mean, it's dangerous for everybody, including those officers.
It absolutely is, but nonetheless, there is no distinction between what they're doing and what other officers are doing. Okay, let me move on to your district, sir, because it has a high concentration of federal employees, many of whom are deemed essential and will be forced to work without pay during this DHS shutdown. What is your message to them? What do you say to workers who see themselves as, I don't know, collateral damage in a political standoff that may not actually curb ICE or CBP's operations?
Yeah, look, I represent 50 to 60,000 federal workers, and the first thing I do is listen to them. And what I listened and heard during the last shutdown and here now is frustration from them that, look, they've endured assault after assault after assault throughout this Trump administration. The administration has been shutting down federal agencies for this entire term. Right now, as we speak, before this latest technical shutdown began, the Trump administration was systematically shutting down FEMA. I meet with my constituents every day who have lost their jobs at FEMA because they've been shutting it down. You have CISA up on the board there, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency. Trump administration eliminated 30% of the staff there. So these agencies have been being shut down by the Trump administration. Now, this shutdown that we've entered is very significant and serious. And look, I track very carefully when those pay dates are for federal workers because a lot of folks can't afford, most folks can't afford to miss one paycheck. They certainly can't afford to miss two paychecks. The good news is a paycheck went out yesterday, Friday, before the shutdown. So folks got those direct deposits. The next payroll date for most DHS employees is at the end of the month. So that's a key date for me that I'll be tracking very carefully.
I'm sure they appreciate you doing that for them. Wednesday, as you know, Attorney General Pam Bondi gave pretty combative testimony before Congress about the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. Bondi refused to answer some basic questions. She mocked Democrats and presented herself as President Trump's defender-in-chief. Let's take a listen to Republican Thomas Massie pressing Bondi over why the names of co-conspirators were redacted in the released documents.
We corrected that within 40 minutes. He was already, you're acting like everybody's trying to cover up Wexner's name.
Reclaiming my time.
I'm going to answer this question.
Reclaiming my time. Mr. Chairman.
This is how this works. It's a political joke, and I need to give my answer on that.
We'll let the Attorney General respond, and then the gentleman can move to his next question.
It's my time.
Within 40 minutes, you asked me a question. Within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
This guy has Trump derangement syndrome.
Oh, boy. What does Bondi's appearance reveal about the way she views Congress and Epstein's survivors?
Well, look, it was an embarrassing performance. It was obvious that she had an audience of one there. There's been ample reporting that, Trump has been frustrated with her inability to articulate his message and his agenda. And she was desperately trying to impress him throughout that hearing. It was sad and embarrassing to watch, but enormously frustrating for the survivors of Epstein's crimes who are there in the audience. You can see some perhaps on the screen there who wanted to get real answers from her about why she's failed to follow the law in releasing the files, why she redacted things that shouldn't have been redacted according to the law, and why she also allowed many of them, survivors, allowed their information to be revealed. So she redacted the wrong things and revealed the wrong things in the files. Very frustrating and outraging for them.
Can I ask, since you reviewed Epstein documents this week, what did you find most disturbing in the documents that you saw?
In the documents I reviewed, and it's important to note, there are hundreds of thousands of redactions, and I was there for about 90 minutes. I found a lot of redactions that were not consistent with the law. Names, email addresses redacted that were not victims or survivors, clearly. The one that I think is most significant, there was an email from Epstein's lawyers to Epstein describing a 20-minute phone call they had with Donald Trump in 2009, where they asked him if he had been on Epstein's jets. And he said, well, I fly on a lot of planes. I don't remember whether I was on that one. When he was asked, had he been to Epstein's mansion, and he gave another denial. Clearly, Donald Trump in 2009 not telling the full truth about his relationship with Epstein. That entire document was redacted. There was no information about victims or survivors in that document. No legal reason for it to have been redacted other than to protect Donald Trump from embarrassment.
So there's a new Wall Street Journal report which paints a pretty damning picture of DHS under the leadership of Kristi Noem and her top advisor, Corey Lewandowski. And it describes a department driven by optics, loyalty tests, and retaliation against career officials, right down to some staged raids and politically driven firings. Do these allegations, sir, of corruption warrant a formal investigation? And what measures should or can Democrats take to hold Noem and Lewandowski accountable?
It absolutely merits a formal investigation. Look, I'm on record. Kristi Noem should step down, be fired, or be removed through impeachment. She has violated her oath to the Constitution. She's failed in her duties. And this is one area where, if you got people to be honest with you, Democrats and Republicans are frustrated with her leadership of DHS. Democrats on the Homeland Security Committee, where I serve, have started an investigation. We have written her asking for detailed answers to questions about allegations of corruption, including the $220 million of taxpayer money she used for an advertising campaign to promote herself, much of which was funneled secretly to her political and personal allies. We're asking tough questions about that. We need Republicans to join us and start doing the right thing here. She's bad for the country. She's bad for the Department of Homeland Security.
Well, joining me now, we have former U.S. Government Director of Hostage Recovery, Christopher O'Leary. He is also an MS Now National Security and Intelligence Analyst. Welcome back to the show, Chris. So what do you make of all that overnight activity, into the morning, in fact, today? Because from what we've learned, does it suggest any appreciable progress in this investigation?
Yeah, listen, there is certainly progress in this investigation with the amount of resources that the FBI has thrown at this and the capabilities of the FBI. The investigation is certainly progressing. The warrant last night The FBI doesn't undertake search warrants lightly, so they would have had to establish fairly solid probable cause to move into search a house, especially during a period of darkness, because the FBI stays away from that. You need a nighttime exception to do a warrant at night, and a judge rarely gives that out. So there's exigency here, why you would want to go if they had reason to believe that Mrs. Guthrie could be there, or there was certainly valid evidence that could be found at that location, leading you to where she's being held. So, I mean, the FBI is definitely being aggressive. I know there's been talk about friction between the FBI and Pima County. The FBI works in collaboration with local and state and other federal partners all the time. There may be disagreements, but to get this mission accomplished, everybody is on the same sheet of music. They might have different ways of approaching a problem, but certainly geared at all getting to the same goal, which is locating and recovering Nancy Guthrie.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so SWAT activity overnight. Also, a more detailed description of the suspect, new DNA discovered at the scene. There has been, Christopher, a flurry of activity. So what do you think in terms of how much this will help identify a suspect? What are they missing? What do they still need? I mean, other than obviously a name, but what is it that could help them get to a name?
Well, certainly the physical evidence that was recovered at the scene, which we don't, the general public doesn't have a full understanding of what forensics were actually gathered at the scene. What has been shared is now the height and weight, the build, the complexion, shoe size is likely to come out, and the clothing items, all those things put out to the general public to help try to identify this man, and also working with, private sector partners like Walmart, trying to identify the point of sale on the backpack and other things. But DNA is only good if we have an exemplar in the system matching it to an individual, or going through publicly available information and getting maybe a familial match will help it. So it's a great piece of information. But again, all of these things are not done in isolation. These things are being done contemporaneously with all the other efforts. There's still more video exploitation to go through, more cellular and technical analysis trying to illuminate this individual when he was in the area, either before abducting Mrs. Guthrie or when he arrived during it, anybody he's associated with. So illuminating his potential associates and picking away at them as well. So all of it is really a detailed investigation that requires the expertise of the FBI and its analysts in partnership with the state and local partners.
Okay, so since the first alleged ransom letter was delivered, you've had two deadlines. They have both come and gone. No payment has been made. And in one video, the Guthrie children said they were willing to pay. That was a week ago tonight. How odd is the sequence of events with respect to the ransom and the nature of these notes?
Yeah, it's a little odd, I will say, from kidnap for ransom cases and from hostage cases, routinely professional, and I use that term, loosely, but professional kidnap for ransom or hostage taking organizations will establish a line of communication, either directly with the family or with an intermediary. In this case, it would be the FBI crisis negotiator to start the negotiations, because they would have taken the victim here, Mrs. Guthrie, for a purpose to be paid. Now, it brings into question if the individual who sent the first two notes is authentic. Do they actually have Mrs. Guthrie? And if they are, well, we would expect them to reestablish communications. If they're not, then you would hope and expect that the people who do have her will establish communications soon. But at the end of the day, the captors are on their timeline, not law enforcement's timeline, or the people of the Tucson area who are certainly concerned about Nancy Guthrie and her health. I will say, lastly, is traditionally speaking, kidnap for ransom groups and hostage taking groups keep the victim safe and healthy as much as they can, and will take into consideration health challenges. And I've seen this play out. So there is hope that Nancy Guthrie, even with her advanced years and her health issues, will come out of this fine on the back end, even though it's been 2 weeks. I've seen cases stretch months and victims recovered safely.
That is what we are all hoping and praying for.